Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in once again, I think, on what is kind of a timely and important subject is what what are some of the key indicators or tips or identifiers if you're in a relationship with someone who is a psychopath, an intra-species predator, male or female. And I just want to sort of go through because a lot of people are sort of on that teetering fence. And when you're part of the problem, if you're in a relationship with a psychopath, is that they don't want you to see their red flags. They've sort of they've put a decoy for the decoy for the decoy for the decoy. In other words, oh, you might say, oh, that person is just, this is how they are, this is how they operate. People who aren't in it, who really see what they have done. So there's a lot of, you're going to have to realize that one of the red flags of a psychopath is you're going to have to think on your own. That you find that all of a sudden you're not wanting to go along with the crowd. You find that you're looking out of the corner of your eye, or you're wrinkling your eyebrows too much. You're wondering something doesn't seem right. You sort of whisper these things under your breath. Why haven't we? Why haven't they? Why haven't and then letting these things slide. So that's a real red flag. I would say is just the understanding is that you'll have some feelings that you do not follow up on and that are meant to be sort of squashed down, ignored, but then are going to come up and seep up in another area. When you're in a relationship with a psychopath, they know that they are different. So they know that, and no, I'm not a psychopath. I'm not talking about myself. I have studied psychology. I've studied education. I've studied English. I've been in business. I've been, through this therapeutic process here. And, one of the things, of course, one thing that people, always want to say, well, what is your story? Well, one of the things that I always wanted to do, or like I wanted to be a resource, like to help people or children of divorce. In other words, children, what a great goal, right? Why do some people want to become a doctor? I wanted to help children of divorce, to help them to understand that even despite all the turmoil, they were good, they were precious, they were lovable, they were important, and that they were safe, and that someone who's an adult does understand them. I mean, like that was kind of like what I wanted to do in psychology, is to be that resource, because to me, one of the main motivating factors is how terrible, how sad, what a loss of a resource, a national resource are its people, and to have its children, and to have that lost at the helm of a ruinous system, is at a consumer system, at an anger of a human being. In other words, that can all be preventable. Why should a child lose their shot at life, or living a happy and safe life? In other words, just because the adults in their life couldn't get it together, or fighting, or alcoholism, or violence, giving all sorts of relationship problems. And I'm sorry, it's freezing in here. I am cold. I'm going to take some tea here and just hold on to it for a second. But my motivation, I say, people say peace and harmony, like, what is your motivation? Well, I feel that a child is, to have a child's innocence or to have their voice lost is the loss, not only for that child, that family, but it's a national resource loss. On the bigger picture, your children are the future. I mean, your children are going to be the doctors, the lawyers, the police. They're going to grow up. Someday you're going to be retired. Someday, and those children, why should they be ruined at the hands of some people who are ignorant? I mean, that's not fair. To me, that's like a human calling that sort of called out to me, that child sitting in that psychologist's office, that, rather than the playground, in that psychologist's office, instead of just being able to learn how to run, jump, skip, or learn how to build a fort or whatever they want to do. And so to help that wounded child was my goal and my motivation. And so in psychology, you get into a lot of research, and started doing a lot of research. And anyway, long story short, I really want, my whole goal is that the psychology research is that it be applied, is that it's helpful, it's results. It's why I didn't want to, why take someone through a process of 10 years and they're still in agony for 10 years. They're paying a doctor bill, and they're not getting better. I didn't want to be part of that system. In my thought process and for creating healing tools, I was a new product developer for a city in Chicago, that we made new product. I've helped create intellectual property. It was, I came alive there. And so it's like, it's not just limited, it's like to psychology. So my sort of interests and things took me in a very circuitous route, but to blend the passions and such, kind of has brought me to this medium where I really want to reach out to people and have a tangible applied result with the truth. And what's really interesting now is with technology, all these little snippets that the photos are doing, they're all in algorithmic ways that are manipulated by artificial intelligence to seem and grab people's attention. So there's just so much to unpack. And how does this tie into my understanding and understanding what it is to identify the red flags of a psychopath? So for one thing, if we take it from the most, is to understand some things from the most simplistic level. So in my desire to help people, meaning you people who are here right today, and the people in the future, is to understand, well, perhaps a little bit about philosophy, and to understand a little bit in depth about what constitutes abusers. I'm not here to diagnose, treat, or anything of these sorts, but for you to get your own grip and understanding of how you can identify and sort of understand behaviors and where the boundaries and then the standards should be, not as they've been eroded or corrupted, either through what you see on TV, movies, Facebook, wherever, YouTube, all the digital industry. Understand that right now, I'll tell you a red flag that I see, with videos and things, the way that you take a picture and it's all of a sudden a moving video. Here's a red flag, okay? And you might not think so. You're taking a picture, and we're going to get to how, but I want you to get a grip. This is results. If you notice, remember you used to just take a picture with your camera, it would take one picture. Then they introduced the quick moving video. Remember, you didn't even have a choice. It just sort of presented itself there. Oh, look, we've got the little video. We didn't even know we were taking a picture. That was just introduced under your thumb, under your tongue, under your eyes, without even, and then of course that was cooler. Do you see, it was like an automatic buy-in, but you didn't get a choice. Do you want to have this still picture, and then so this is a red flag. And so now the video, what they're studying is then, of course, what certain things catch behavior and help identify ratings. So a type of smile. So then the camera will look for a shape and take a snippet and then try to keep that. So that's where technology is sort of overriding human will, and you don't really get a choice. That's a red flag with psychopathy, which means they've already tried to tell you you can't, they can't, you can't. A red flag of a psychopath is that you kind of get the feeling that you can't live without them, because they're so good, they fit together in such a specific way, the way that they help you think, feel, do, there's this feeling, I think, and then there's the evading of that ability to view. I would say that would be um, one of the like unread red flags is that the red flag is not visible. It is invisible. The book Snakes in Suits. I mean, these people who have cloaking of different lies and they're have people looking out for them. I mean, this is on the military level, but down to the personal. So if you're to understand, so it's and so that they will dress themselves up, comb their hair, do whatever to be as if. It's not who they are, it's to be as if. And this is ingenuine fake. That is this is a problematic thing, because you want to eventually know who you're working for, who you're working with, who you're married to, who your siblings are, neighbors, etc. You don't want to be living, amongst that, which then becomes a very serious danger. And so, a red flag of that is that, there's this I always say just sort of floating in unnoticed. And then getting you into a feeling of all absorption, I would say, where, previous before you had, but it really, almost like I need a new drug, if this person makes you feel readily very different. And this should be something that you should be a little concerned about, is to have a check. So what's the solution? Have a check on your feelings. But that's what the whole problem with the psychopath is they don't want you to have a check on your feelings. So the solution, have a check on your feelings. Check on your feelings. Whose feelings? Theirs? No, yours. Okay, your feelings, because it's that which goes beyond where you then lose sort of ability to see and acknowledge and validate what your own gut is telling you, what your own bank account is telling you, what your own resume is telling you, what your own wife, spouse, family is telling you. So it's like all the senses get clogged up. The ears cannot hear, the heart can't feel, the eyes can't really see, and the skin can't really touch. It creates sort of a language of its own. The language, oh, you think it's, and then this is the language of business. This is the language of love. This is the language of the family. It just has to be this rotten. Oh, that's terrible. It's just always going to be this rotten. A psychopath will have you, namely then red flag is, have you believe and live in lies about yourself. Believe and live in lies about yourself. Talk about, having yourself do the dirty work for you. How about turning yourself against yourself? How to make one person's work do two. They've just recruited you to do the dirty work against yourself. Oh boy, there's an army of two now, then there's going to be an army of more, the more life continues. What does it mean then to be against yourself? Running yourself ragged, overscheduling, overwhelming yourself, pushing the limits, pushing too hard, working till you're delirious, partying till you're delirious, partying too long, partying, or sleeping, when you start getting into these and then feeling that, you know, that this is, but and there's these little whispers underneath that this is getting too much, but you want to repress, push that down, dismiss, and repress it, because to do so would be to question and not live in that same bubble, because a psychopath generally creates a bubble, meaning of a context, of a way of relating, of a way of looking at things, a way of interpreting things that is only through their lens. And then they pretty much have their bubble going, and then other people will step into and out of the bubble and then feel whatever drug that they are associating, a winner in business, a winner in love, winner in sex, winner in whatever. There's this, sort of, but then making it seem as if it's something different, in other words, it's the Harley woman who all of a sudden wants to start needle pointing. I mean, just some strange, these things don't go together. Cognitive dissonance. They start letting you know a little bit more about themselves, when things progress. But a red flag is to know then that your body, you start getting tired, you start wondering, you start missing, and you don't start sort of checking things out in reality, either with yourself or with this person. You start letting things go. And then, they're just, and this is better. And then, you begin to then say, what is this a better way? But then you don't realize that there's an overhaul of your thinking, an overhaul of what you're doing, and sort of a different law going on. And that might seem a lawlessness, but basically because a psychopath a red flag is that lawlessness, which means there is no right or wrong. There is nothing too risky. The risky seems right. The wrong seems right. The right is, that's what it's, that, or whatever they're trying to communicate. I would say, or, and to why, in other words. And otherwise, people then want to know why, and they can't answer, why is this person with me? Why are you with me? Why are we together? A red flag when you start questioning then, why, and oftentimes, a red flag of a psychopath is that of a parasitic nature, which means, they need people to hide under. They need people to hide behind. They need false, they need people to recognize and validate their false self, which is their public self, which is what appears to be reality, but it is not. They have an uncanny ability to live in unreality. I mean, to the point that most people couldn't do or physically tolerate. They couldn't tolerate living in two different houses, or two different cities, or under two different names, or two different marriages. I don't understand why someone can get 2 or 3 marriages behind someone else's back. That to me seems illegal. But a psychopath, they will do that. I didn't know you were already married. I didn't know you had these kids. Or if they do, another red, why aren't the kids here? Why, or why aren't they there? Or why are, certain things that you would see other couples or other businesses going through, or families, they're not being brought in. And then there's usually some very unemotional, so like where you'd expect some emotion, there's no emotion, even for a woman. I just, say strange things about their kids. Oh, it's, I don't want you to meet them. They would ruin you. Or something strange. You're like, why would a woman say that about their own children? No, something doesn't add up. The behavior does not match. And that creates cognitive discord, which a lot of people might find pleasantly attractive. It's like clashing, So some people, like in music, heavy metal, it's all that clashing. It can be a real release for a lot of people. They might get a lot of their own frustration out. So, like a viewer who said, why are borderline so attracted? So people who are borderline, who have kind of this sort of unstable sense of themselves, meaning good days, I'm having a good day, it's a bad day, I'm a lot of instability, and then a lot of anger, and then a lot of fun is getting the anger out, so anger can be like a component of the life. And eventually this can become unhealthy, but getting, that sort of that behavior, just the music drives them crazy, and it's like a drug, and they think that it makes them superhuman. Thinks that it makes them superhuman, as you get older, and you're like, oh no, that I was not superhuman. That was me having a fit of sadness in a public place that I was drunken. And you really look at and are really able to see the strength, behind the tears, or the strength behind the smiles, or the strength behind the doubt. In other words, you were waiting for a different turn that never happened, but you have to make a turn. And so the red flag, I would say, is this sort of, living then in denial of oneself, one's values, and one's interests. So these are really different red flags. So you're going to see like on others, but I'm trying to help you for yourself, meaning for people who have been harmed, hurt, and it feels very difficult to identify, like, is this what it is, So you become then growingly dissociated or distanced from your values. In other words, things that you used to work hard for, your kid's savings, a marriage, a house, or other things, your job, your profession, your reputation, your happiness, all these things go south, go north, go plunging, go to somewhere you don't even know where they are anymore, and they're way off focus. It's no longer the aim, or you're sabotaging yourself and you don't even know it. In other words, wasting a lot of time, money, attention, trying to build the relationship, and it's not really going there. In other words, you're sort of being played out a little bit. There's other things going on you're not being privy to, and they might just be having a song and a dance, having a good time. You're not having the same good time. There's that red flag. Things that used to be important, or you find, that there's a heightened arousal that you feel uncomfortable with, and your body is running you ragged, or doing some things which are risky. The psychopath, they try to sort of program certain things within you in insidious or enigmatic ways of communicating that don't really that bypass people's way of thinking, people's way of seeing and knowing. So they have a way to get into people's subconscious, which can be very terrifying. So a red flag would be when they're in your subconscious, meaning you're finding you're doing strange behaviors that are out of character for you. You know, and you're like, why would I just cash in this? Why would I start eating that? Why would I start smoking? Why would I start, doing this absentee behavior? And then there's this, sort of personal, sort of, I would say just too much sacrifice. But then, and then just trying to call the boundary on the sacrifice and calling it for what it is, and not living in a contextual uh, relationship where you're thinking something that it's not. In other words, you're you're working hard in the relationship when you're just suffering, meaning you're putting up, you're trying to lay out the red carpet, you're trying to lay out the house, you're trying to lay out the car. Men who think that, oh, they're going to attract the woman by, if I, oh, here's the car, here's the house, and then you wonder uh, why the woman is gone with the car, and then they bring it back smashed up. I mean, you gave them a car. I mean, you're what's wrong with them having their own car? um and or other things, men maybe then make the mistake, or of giving away too much money, the things that men think that they would make a good man. Oftentimes the male provider, not having to work here, and then these, why don't I get you someone who can do your nails, so who can do your hair, and the woman basically doesn't have to do anything for themselves. Well, it's important for women to do things for themselves, have their own credit, their own job, their own say, etc. Um, and likewise, and not to have that sort of, like as if you're the red flag is all of a sudden you don't have responsibility for something, or just too many things. There's too many special things, or it fits right away too quickly, or there's sort of this, a jealousy sort of that will be put in there as part of the equation. It's just always sort of always needing or looking to the best. A psychopath, they can churn and burn through all sorts of different things differently than a regular, I don't say a regular person, but someone who's not a psychopath, meaning they can burn through relationships, money, decisions, whatever, in a way that most people are not built. So then there's a physical then mismatch, physical mismatch, where you can say this just doesn't seem humanly possible. Well, then listen to what you're saying. A red flag would be you stop listening to yourself and what you're saying. This is too much. I can't keep up with this. And you start just going, I'm putting up with this. I'm keeping up with this. I'm doing this. And then you're then living, then sabotaging yourself. And you think, well, this is I do this at this time of my life. This is what a woman does. This is what a man does. For a woman, giving away sex too quickly, is usually the thing. Or I will stop seeing other men, or there's all these other things. I will cook, I will clean, I will bake, or whatever, things that the woman says that they're going to do that, are their specialty or what have you. So there is it's a very different type of red flag, and the difficulty, the hideousness is that it goes, it's a toxicity in the neurochemistry for that person, means its symptoms can be lack of focus, extreme anxiety, paranoia, extreme fear, extreme jealousy, apparently, loss of sights of, self-worth, I mean, just all sorts of different things, but it's on a real severe level that most people in their life, so there's this sort of, I would say there's a real extreme, or a there's an extreme and then sort of a different layer of the relationship where it's too secretive, which means that person can only do things and sets things up to grow in a specific way that changes your perception, and that you're sort of in their world. There's sort of like a feeling then you're in someone else's world, and it's not just, it's like their way of thinking, which means they're sort of doing then the directing of the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth for you, rather than you're being led astray, is sort of what I'm being told. And it seems like, you're being led to the marriage, the job, and it's really not. But your inside, your vagus nerve will begin to, that needs to be in tune. And if someone who tries to either touch you there or touch you on the side or touch you to try to interrupt that connection, is another red flag. I would say, and maybe, if you see men, holding women at the workplace down by the waist, no, that's not how a married man engages another married woman. That is, or a man, hanging his arms around another colleague, just thinking that it's a reward when it's really sort of taking them over. These sort of mixed messages things, where, especially when it comes to the high risk behaviors, they start engaging in those. They start engaging in theft, money laundering, or, cooking the books, or putting a little extra, doing this, doing that, it's okay. And then pretty much, it's that gambling lifestyle, convincing, that immorality is okay. Oh, we just cheated this once. We just cheated, it's as if it's okay. When it's not okay with you. You have morality. You were maybe raised in a church. You don't do this, you don't do that, or you have some semblance of what you would like. You would like to know what self-respect is. You lose self-respect. I think that's the name. They basically take off your self-respect and say, you don't need that, do you? You need, you need to be disrespected, and so if you do not have self-respect, that will lead you to do a lot of self-disrespecting things. Let's leave it at that. What would be self-disrespecting? Just something that you would not want to be known for. You would not want, or you don't think is truly you. I mean, but that, so you can, and that high risk behavior, not being where you're supposed to be. You're in at work, and you're gonna slip out the door, leave in your car, do this, meet them, come back. You're supposed to be clocked in. Stuff like this. Or other things, leaving the kids, leaving this, the money, other things, and that was way wrong, and, and it's the same. Oh, well, if you were really working hard, or it's just this sort of blurring of the lines is how the psychopath will, get very convincing. I didn't do it. And then especially a psychopath is, I would say another red flag is they're extremely cool under pressure. They don't tremble. They don't quake. They fail lie detector tests even though they're lying. Their skin temperature doesn't change. Their palms don't sweat. Their eyes don't flicker. They don't have that same reaction. So, oh boy, well, wouldn't that make a good person who had to work under pressure, like a Wall Street trader? oh this, oh that, and they're just like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They're going, yeah, we're hiring you, girl, we're hiring you, guy. Or, somebody who loses a child, loses a pet, loses a spouse, and they're just kind of like, just so on with the next thing. It's just they didn't lose anything. They're not affected. They're just back at work. They're back at school. They're back taking the test. They're picking up the kids. They're and then they'll plan things as if. The computer's on as if they were working. The phone is there as if they were working. The bed is there as if they had slept, as if they had eaten. And so a psychopath, they will, they'll, make, they'll fool people, basically right down to it. And if you say, I'm not a good match for a fool, good for you. You've just made a declarative statement, and maybe, make that determination for yourself. If it's hard to see or claim the red flags of what these types of people do. And it should be criminal, yes, but oftentimes they're the people who have the footsteps and they've got a brush right behind themselves and they're erasing their footsteps as if they go, as if they've got a magic, sweeping thing right behind their shoe. Like those, have you ever seen those Mercedes with a little, like as if the headlight needs its own windshield wiper. Does the rear view mirror need its own window wiper? I mean, but they're very good at being undetectable. I mean, they do and see things that other people don't. So this is just a little bit of a touch on some of these red flags. Is that oftentimes they're meant to be so undetectable, but oftentimes, like your body, I think, in those people will feel something uncomfortable and begin to notice some discomfort and question. So it's almost like the body will register something, which is a marvel of humanity. If your body knows things before the eyes do, before the ears do, which is really significant. The vagus nerve, which runs there, is a significant source and resource of your knowledge and your instinct. I had a gut feeling, men and women. Learn to understand what that means and learn to see people who want you to deny that, who want you to sever that, who want you to just do it instead, who want you to stay up late, who wants you to eat and drink what you don't want, who wants you to do behaviors you're not comfortable with, or live some sort of fantasy life that's on some sort of other channel that in reality it's not bringing home the happy. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussions, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day. You got this.